All right. Hello, my flat earth family. Look at me. I'm doing this again. And I just have to tell you, it's a little bit nerve wracking, looking at yourself and talking to yourself and realizing you're going to be immortalized on video, even if it's just YouTube. But here I am, and I'm so happy to be talking with everyone and sharing my opinion and sharing my thoughts again. Once I get into it, it does become easier. And I encourage everyone out there that has an opinion, has some thoughts about the flat earth or something that's very important to them. If you have a smartphone, get it out, record yourself, and document your thoughts and share them with other people. You would be surprised how many other people are going to benefit from listening to what you have to say and are going to resonate with your thoughts. There's a lot more of us out there thinking and feeling along the same lines than you would expect, and you would be surprised. So, yep, here I am again. I promised everybody that I would document my theories and my ideas on Antarctica. Just a couple ideas. It's not going to be like a science lesson. I'm not that kind of brain. But a couple weeks ago, I was on a show with Robert Shortman, who's very, very kind to invite me onto his Flat Earth. It's either Flat Earth Chat and Talk or Flat Earth Talk and Chat, but it's a very good show. He has great guests and has some very enthusiastic conversations. And I got to be on there a couple weeks ago. We were talking about things like electricity and lightning and the effects that they have on humans. And it just so happens that I had a pretty interesting story from my past of a situation with being struck by lightning. Now, I'm not going to go into that today. I guess that will be another blog or vlog, video log. But at the very end of that video, I wanted to get out a theory kind of quickly, and I kind of rushed it, but I wanted to get it out there documented about some thoughts I had on Antarctica, and specifically wanted to share them with Robert, which I had in the past, because we called and talked a couple times online, and it turns out he shared a lot of the same theories that I had about some of the things that he had witnessed in Antarctica, and just some things that were going through my mind after he had shared some of his testimony. Absolutely fascinating that he's been there, firsthand account. So at the end of that show, I shared a little bit about what was on my mind, and oddly enough, Google kicked me off the Hangout right at the end. I was able to hop back on and continue with my theory, but it was at the very end of the Hangout. So I promised that I would do a video log and actually document, my thoughts, so that I could go back and maybe add to it, and it would just be on video how I was feeling, and other people could also go back and watch instead of having to watch a very long show if that's all they wanted to kind of reference. So yeah, Robert and I had talked a couple times because of a couple things he had mentioned about Antarctica. I'm going to try to remember some of the things that kind of like spurred me on and got my brain and my gears working and thinking of these other theories. So I remember hearing Robert talk about the fact that the ice wall, I know not everybody believes that there's an ice wall, that Antarctica is the ice wall. But he is saying that all the ice that he knows of in Antarctica was the most purest, clear, fresh, clean water. And we're talking it's possibly holding the oceans in, but it is not made out of salt water. It is very, very clear, clean, fresh water. And we're not exactly sure where this water comes from when it's surrounded by the salt water. And my theory was, if we indeed do live on I definitely believe that we live on a flat and stationary plane. But if we are in an enclosed world where we have some kind of dome or firmament covering us, I liken it to a giant terrarium. Now, I've built terrariums before, and the very fantastic thing about a terrarium is that if you put live plants in there that are giving off oxygen and they are releasing humidity into the air, very quickly when you build a terrarium and you enclose it, you seal it off. It will, they say, start to rain in there, but really all it does is that the water that is evaporating from the moist dirt you might put in there, or the plant life, is evaporating, and it condenses on the inside of, it's usually a glass container, a glass covering. I've always built them in glass covering, or a glass container, so you could see through them and you can see what you created on the inside and watch things grow and watch things change. Well, I got to thinking that maybe our dome or our firmament works the same way, in that the water from the oceans, the water from our creeks and our rivers and our ponds and our lakes, the waters from the plant life, the moisture in the air from the weather. When there's a difference in hot and cold, it can condense, and when it evaporates, or something called, or transpires, or trans-evaporation, it will collect on, if we are indeed in a enclosed world and we have a dome or a firmament, why wouldn't that water collect on the outside? And perhaps that very clean, fresh, pure water then runs down the sides of the firmament, and then because the outside of our, what we know of as our earth or our world, the sun doesn't reach that outer rim. I have done some studies on the evidence of the sun's path. If it doesn't reach that outer rim, that would make sense why Antarctica stays very cold. And the water that drips down the firmament then would freeze, because it has no, it's not, there's no availability of it to be warm, because the sun's path does not go that far. And it kind of puts me in mind that, I mean, and this just boggles my mind, and it's incredible to fathom, that literally our earth is a giant water distillery. So distilled water is literally running down the sides of the dome or the firmament and then freezing as our ice wall. That is something that kind of came to my mind. And ironically enough, Robert Shortman said that he was thinking the same thing. He said he was, his mind was going right along the same line as mine. Great minds think alike, you know. And that's why, to me, that gives us an idea as to where all that water came from, why it's so fresh and pure. It's fresh water, but it's surrounded by salt water. Where's that coming from? Then I got to thinking, okay, that could be an answer. But another answer could also be, as far as why there is moisture condensing on the outside, it could be something like, if our sun, of course, burns very hot, and the moon is its polar opposite and cools things down. I've heard other people talk similar to this. I think Bob Xanadude60, I think he says something similar to this, and Stephen Albano from the Facebook groups also mentions something like this, where the moon is literally there to cool the sun down so it doesn't get too hot, and they work off each other that way. That, when something is cold and you bring it into heat, it condenses. And perhaps something like that, the way the sun and the moon work together, is what is condensing water onto the dome or the firmament. This is me thinking out loud. And like I said, I wanted to be able to record it and keep this as a history. And other people can reference it, other people can use it, and they can add to it, which would be wonderful. My mind started going in some other directions. I'm not completely 100% set on what I'm saying here. It's just theories and it's ideas. If someone else wants to, take that idea and run with it, and they have other ideas, I'm all for that. Like I've said before, I want you all to absolutely enjoy your experience learning about all this. I am. And I'm throwing this out there for everyone. Another idea I started thinking about, like, there's so many little nuances out there about the heavens that we are not 100% sure of even yet. But it is so much fun learning, so much fun discovering, observing. I got to thinking that perhaps when the water is dripping, if it is really condensing and it's like a water distillery, Earth is, a giant water distillery, and water is running down the dome or the firmament and collecting at the bottom and turning into the ice wall. When that water drips down, is that what we are seeing when we see shooting stars? Now, hear me out. I've done a little bit of studying on this in the past as far as how water is affected by frequency. Probably back in like September or October of 2015, I remember working a little bit hand in hand or just collaborating as far as just sharing opinions with, I think it was Carrie Stevens or Steffens, I'm not sure how you say his last name. I think a little bit with Alex Carrion, who used to be Alex Constitutionalist. When they were filming stars, and we were starting to get a really good idea on how stars look very, very different than a sun. I mean, it doesn't look like our sun, and they twinkle and they pulse, like they have a frequency that pulses through them. They vibrate, they change color, and of course they emit their own light. When we, back to the studies, back in October, I remember sharing this in my group when it first started, and some other groups, that you can take a droplet of water and you can add frequency to it, and you can make that water droplet levitate. Then as you change the frequency, you can make the water droplet change shape, which refers to like sacred geometry. Depending on the change in the frequency, the shape in that water droplet will change, and all the while it's literally being levitated. Now, that research and those studies continued on, and other people took it and ran with it, and I was not the only one that thought this way. What's so wonderful is that so many of us are thinking along the similar lines at the same time. It's exciting that a lot of us are coming to the same conclusions, because it's just synchronicity. We're all kind of coming to the same conclusions at very similar times. And the idea of what's called sonoluminescence then also appeared out on the flat earth community in the awakening, where you're not just talking about the vibration or the frequency levitating the water and turning it into those geometric shapes we were seeing for the stars, but also creating a pulse of light, a little spark of light. So here's how I'm coming back to the shooting star theory. I'm not talking about meteorites like that we find, and people say they found a shooting star or meteorite that landed. Maybe those are scales or something coming off of the dome. But I'm talking about when they say there's going to be a meteor shower, and you sit there and you just watch time after time again. It looks like, if you think about it in a different way, it looks like water droplets running down, kind of like your windshield whenever you get your car cleaned, get your car washed. And I was thinking, and this is just a theory, that what if what we're seeing in these meteor showers is water running down the dome, starts out slow, and then as it gets to the end, it gets faster. And because of the frequency that it's creating friction, it's running down the side, it's creating a frequency, and it emits a tiny little spark of light and then fizzles out, because it's gaining speed and then fizzles out. I don't know. It was just a thought, because I'm trying to think in my head, like, how in the world do scientists, how do they know how to predict these meteor showers? Well, an easy way to predict it, especially since they're messing around with the weather so much, if they know that condensation is starting to gather and it's going to be starting to drip down the firmament or the dome, and they're really paying attention to it like that, then they could probably predict within a few days, okay, there's a lot of water gathering up there. It's going to start dripping down. We're talking in massive scales, and we're going to have a meteor shower. I don't know. You guys can kind of mull that over in your head and think about it. Another thing I wanted to mention, I don't want people to think that just because I talk about the existence of a dome or a firmament, that means that I don't necessarily agree with there could be more land. Because that's not necessarily impossible. I was starting to think that if we do have a dome and a firmament, and we're in an enclosed world and it's like a terrarium, that there still could be ways to get out. So I started thinking about underwater sea vessels. There are ways that you can go under the water you can enter into an underwater sea vessel or an underwater sea base. I'm not sure submarines work this way, but there are ways that you can get into underwater sea vessels without breaking the pressurized inside of that vessel by, if you were to swim out underneath the vessel, and they have what's called, ironically, a moon pool, where you swim underneath and you go up through a pocket in the middle of that vessel that you can swim up through the water and enter into the vessel, and you're not changing the compression or any of the pressure in that vessel. It's called a moon pool. So hear me out. What if in the center of the flat earth, where everyone says that the North Pole is, a lot of people talk about Mount Meru. Some people say it is a mountain. Some people say it's a network of caves. It could be a mountain and a network of caves. That makes sense to me. And sometimes what do you find along with networks of caves? Oftentimes you find water. Could the middle of our flat earth, where the North Pole is, be the gateway to get out from the outside, to get out on the outside of the Antarctica wall, the ice wall? Now, you wouldn't be, a human wouldn't be able to do it. You'd have to have some kind of vessel or some way to come back and forth if it is going out through water. But there are stories, especially if you've done a lot of research into the alien and the UFO phenomenon, of crafts being able to go into the water, and specifically crafts flying into the hole, Mount Meru, the caves, the water, whatever it is, in the North Pole, in the center of the flat earth. What if they understand that that is a way, and that is a way that you can go down? You're not breaking any kind of pressurized anything inside of this terrarium, and come out wherever you want to, possibly other places on Earth, but possibly travel outside of the Antarctic wall. I don't know. It just kind of came to me as I was thinking about the idea of the how the ice wall was being fed, maybe by condensation off the side of the dome. Bunch of thoughts going through my head. I'm sure I will add to this in the future. If you're interested, look up moon pool. I think it's extremely fascinating that it is called a moon pool, and we're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with our luminaries and the heavens and our Earth in general. But it could be something like that. I think that is all that I wanted to go over. I really am excited to hear everyone's thoughts. And like I always say, please, please, everyone, enjoy your experience learning about this flat Earth. Talk to you soon.